Deconstructing Ideals. This is on consciousness and the lack thereof. Sentience. Sentient. Having sense perception, conscious, experiencing sensation or feeling, having a faculty or faculties of sensation and perception. That was the definition. All living things are aware of their senses, since their senses create their awareness. Consciousness is an illusion. In the waking state, we are aware of our senses. In a dream state, we are aware of our dreams. In deep sleep, there is no awareness and no consciousness. Every night as we enter deep sleep, we don't exist. We aren't conscious. We don't even know how much time has passed without a clock or waking up and seeing the sun. This proves that without sensory impulses and sense stimuli and the mental activity of processing that sense stimuli, there is no awareness or consciousness, which means there is no self or soul or I. People say consciousness is eternal. It's not eternal. It doesn't live past when the body dies, because every single night, it doesn't even last 24 hours. Not only is it not eternal and live beyond death, it's not even 24 hours a day. Every night it ends. Quote from David Hume: "For my part, when I enter most intimately into what I call myself, I always stumble on some particular perception or other of heat or cold, light or shade, love or hatred, pain or pleasure. I never can catch myself at any time without a perception, and never can observe anything but the perception. When my perceptions are removed for any time, as by sound, sleep, so long I am insensible of myself, and may truly be said to not exist." Anatta, or no self. Siddhartha Gautama, most commonly referred to as the Buddha, has great insights into the illusion of a conscious self, known as anatta, or no self. Siddhartha Gautama. Okay, this is the parable in King Milanda's Questions. The king's first question is on the nature of the self and personal identity. But what is a chariot? Nagasena asked, "Is it the wheels, or the axles, or the reins, or the frame, or the seat, or the draught? Is it a combination of all those elements? Or is it found outside those elements?" The king answered no to each question. "Then there is no chariot," Nagasena said. Now the king acknowledged the designation chariot, dependent on these constituent parts, but that chariot itself is a concept or a mere name. But there is no chariot essence that somehow dwells within the parts. This is from the Milandapanna, King Milanda's Questions, Milandapanna. Another Buddhist text, the Buddhist skandhas, or khandas, the 5 aggregates, says, what is consciousness? The 6 bodies of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, intellect consciousness. This is called consciousness. When the Buddha first introduced the concept of not self in his second sermon, he also introduced a way of strengthening its impact with a series of questions based around the khandhas. Taking each khandha in turn, he asked, is it constant or inconstant? Inconstant. And is what is inconstant stressful or pleasurable? Stressful. And is it fitting to regard what is inconstant, stressful, subject to change as this is mine, this is myself, this is what I am? No. This is from the 5 aggregates, or the khandhas, the 5 khandhas, the skandhas, which means heaps or bundles. Basically the 5 sense perceptions that create what we call a self. The Buddha introduced a challenge to try to be aware of 2 sensory stimuli at the same time. However, we can only focus on one, or be aware of one at a time. You can shift your focus and awareness very rapidly between your senses, but never simultaneously. I personally experienced with this challenge many times. One day it started raining while I was at the beach. I would focus on my vision of the ocean. And as soon as I became aware or focused on the feeling of rain landing on my head, I noticed that I was no longer focusing on my vision. The ocean faded into, at best, my peripheral vision, something that was there, but which I could not define, notice any details of, or observe changes in it, such as the movement of the waves. Unless, of course, I then shifted my awareness back from the physical sensation of the rain landing on my head back to the wave. Usually, this would, something would catch my vision, like a pelican flying by. That, if I was focusing on the rain, the feeling, the sense feeling of my head, the touch feeling, sense of touch, the rain landing on my head, I wasn't actually focusing on the water. I wasn't looking at any details, the water, the waves, anything, the clouds, nothing. It was there, my eyes were open, I was looking at it, but it was like peripheral, like a background when I was focusing on the sense of touch from my head, feeling the rain. As soon as a bird flew by or a wave crashed that caught my attention, quote unquote, attention, my focus, all of a sudden, I'm focusing on that bird flyby. And at that point, I can no longer feel the rain touching my head, landing. It's still touching, it's still affecting my sense of touch, but I didn't feel it unless I focused back on that feeling of rain, that feeling of touch. And at that point, I'm still looking at the bird or whatever, but I cannot tell you any details about it. I would have to recall it from when I was focused on it the moment before. And the same with sound. I could hear the waves crashing. However, I could not focus on the sound unless I decided to focus on the sound. When I focused on the sound, my eyes are still open, the rain is still hitting my head, but I can't notice. They're not in my attention. They're out of focus. They're not in direct awareness. Unless I shifted my awareness away from the sound of the waves crashing, the sound sense of sound, back to the touching, the feeling of the rain touching my head, or back to the vision of the waves crashing. However, trying to do all 3 at once is impossible. Try it yourself. We think we can. The closest we can get is rapidly switching back and forth, rapidly shifting awareness from vision to sense stimuli or sound stimuli rapidly. We can do it rapidly back and forth, and through this combination, we kind of consider it the moment or the experience of all 3 together combined. However, they're not They're not combined. You cannot focus on all three at the same time. Try it. We can't even be aware of two different sense stimuli being perceived or received by the same sense organ simultaneously. So, for instance, if two people are talking at the same time, you'll inevitably miss what one of them says. Often a single word from one person will catch your attention. So if you're watching a TV show, someone's talking on it, and or you're listening to one conversation and another person starts talking to you, it'll distract you from the person that's speaking to you previously. Or if they're both talking to you at the same time, you'll start to jumble the conversations between the two if they're talking about different things. One word will catch your focus, and the moment that one word, you decide to focus on that one word that catches your attention, quote unquote, you then have to say, well, wait a minute, it's that word, what about such and such? Like, you'll have to question the actual context of that word that caught your attention, but you don't have that context. So you can shift back and forth, and at that time, if you're asking that person, wait, what context were you referring to, whatever word, and they start explaining the context, and now you're trying to figure out what the question's about or what they're talking about regarding that word. The prior person that's still talking to you, the prior conversation, you're no longer listening until something catches your attention from that person. So this illustrates that it's impossible to focus on or fully be aware of two separate conversations simultaneously. It demonstrates that what we call consciousness or awareness is merely an aggregate of multiple impermanent sense stimuli coupled with the brain's processing of those stimuli.